Since launching in the April of 1979, Mobile Suit Gundam has seen countless iterations in all forms of media, being a fan-favorite franchise. From anime, manga, and novels to video games, radio dramas, and of course plastic models. Gundam as an IP has fans all around the globe, and in July of 2025, Bandai is taking things into a new-ish frontier with their ambitious worldwide release of the Gundam Card Game. Now, Gundam isn't necessarily new to the TCG environment, with card games releasing as far back as 1999 and collaborations in other games such as Battle Spirits. However, these games have struggled to stick around previously. Starting with a worldwide release for this latest iteration though, Bandai has shown just how confident they are in not only what they've learned from the previous card games, but also their more recent successful games like Digimon, One Piece, and Dragon Ball. And with the 4 starter decks for the Gundam card game releasing on the 11th of July before the release of this video, and the first full set, New Type Rising, releasing shortly after on the 25th of July, this is the perfect time to jump in. This video will aim to teach you all that you need to know about how to play the Gundam card game, with subsequent videos covering the first 4 starter decks as well as the first set of the game. With Gundam being a very near and dear to my heart franchise, I'm really excited to jump in and teach you about this game, so let's get started. Alright, so moving on to our next kind of part of the tutorial here. Apologies in advance if there is any kind of change in audio quality and stripping or anything like that. I've just got to kind of switch to my lapel mic while we are kind of doing these point of view parts of the video. So first things first, of course in TCGs you don't have a game if you don't have cards. So first thing that we're going to look at is the different types of cards that can be found in the TCG, as well as how to read them. So in general, we've got 4 different types of cards. We have our unit cards, which are our mobile suits, the mobile armors, etc., things like that. We've got the pilots for those mobile suits. We have command cards, which are kind of similar to like spells in other games, they're like instants. And lastly, probably one of my favorite mechanics of the game so far, are the bases. So let's start off with the unit cards. So starting off with, if we want to identify the type of card that we're looking at, we just want to simply check the left side of the card here. So we can see that the Gundam Aerial Permit Score 6 here has the unit classification just here. So we know that this is a unit card. On the top left of the card, we're going to have its level and its cost. We're going to cover exactly what this means in the resource section of the video, but essentially what this tells us is at what point in the game a card can be played, as well as how much it costs to do so. So we can see Aerial here can be played once we're at level 5 and costs us 4 to play. In the middle here, we have the unit's name as well as its effect. Nice little touch that I like as well is that they do have the unit's kind of model number from the actual lore in there as well. Doesn't really have an effect in the game as of yet, I just think it's a really nice touch. So unit cards can have a lot of different types of effects that will trigger at a lot of different kind of timings. For example, when they're attacking, when they're deployed, when they're destroyed, when they pair or they link, and so on. But of course, we're going to cover that in a little bit of a later chapter. Along the bottom here, starting on the upper left, we have the unit's zone. So for example, here we have space and earth, followed by the unit's traits. At this point in the game, from my knowledge, we don't really have a use for these zones as of yet, but given that they're there, I'm sure they'll come up eventually. There are some cards that will reference the trait of your mobile suit as well. Next, we have the link pilot for this unit. We're going to discuss this a little bit later, but this can be either pilots of a particular trait, or in this instance, a specific pilot like Soletta Mercury. Lastly, on the bottom left, we have the unit's AP and HP. This can be thought of as essentially the attacking power and its health. If you've played Magic the Gathering, this is basically power and toughness. The next type of card that we're going to have a look at is going to be our pilot card. So these are going to be the pilots or the users of our units in our mobile suits. So similar to our mobile suits, the level and cost of our pilots is going to be found on the top left. Unlike the mobile suits, however, the name and the effect of these pilot cards is actually going to be found on the bottom of the card. The reason for this is because when we pilot a deployed unit card, we actually slot the pilot underneath it. So this is basically just so that we can still see the effect of the unit card, as well as the effect being given to it by the pilot card. At the top of this bottom section, we're going to have the name of the pilot as well as their trait here. So as we kind of briefly discussed when looking at the unit cards, some units like the Gundam Aerial Permit Score 6 are going to have a specific pilot or a trait pilot with the link column here. So basically, this is kind of what these two columns here are going to be what you're looking for when determining if, when you pair, that you've made a link unit. So we can see here that this is looking for Soletta Mercury. We have Soletta Mercury here. So this is now a link unit. Again, we'll discuss more about kind of what a link unit is a little bit later on. On the right here, just along the bottom, we'll see that pilots also have their own AP and HP. However, just aside from being the actual number, they've actually got this plus symbol on either of them. So we can see that Soletta here is a +1, +2. Basically what this means is that when they are paired, the pilot is actually adding on their AP and HP onto the unit that they are piloting. So normally the Gundam Aerial here would be a 4-4. With Soletta pairing it, it is actually a 5-6 unit. Lastly, on the bottom is our pilot's effect. So very similar to unit cards, there are going to be many different types of effects that pilots can have that are going to trigger at different times. Next type of card that we're going to look at are these command cards, or also known as kind of spells or order cards. There's two types. Let's start off with Unforeseen Incident here first. So as normal, we've got our level and cost just up in the top left. Focus up for me, there we go. Now, as mentioned, with these being more like spells or orders, once we've played them, they're not going to stay on the board like our units and our pilots do. They're going to resolve the effect that's shown here, and then they're going to go into our trash, drop, graveyard, whatever you'd like to call it. So in the event of Unforeseen Incident here, let's have a look. We would pay the 1 cost. Come on, focus up for me. See, giving me a bit of trouble, that's okay, I'll just read it past the camera. This one says main/action, which basically tells us at what time we can use the card. We would choose one enemy unit and it gets -3 AP during this turn. So basically what this main and action here means, it tells us when we can actually use this card. So we can either use it during our main phase, which we'll kind of get into phases shortly, or with this action, that actually means that we can play this during our opponent's turn. So if they're swinging into our shields or trying to swing into one of our units, we could use this in response and lower the attack power of the attacking unit. Next up, we've also got, now that we've kind of been able to cover both the pilots and basic command cards, we've also got these command cards. Now, you'll see that they do have, again, their level and cost, they are classified as a command card, and they do have a command card effect here. However, this one here, Thoroughly Damaged, also has kind of the stat block of a pilot along the bottom. It has the name, it has the trait, and it also has the plus AP and HP. So these are, you can almost think of these like a modal spell from Magic the Gathering, where you can either choose to play it as the command card, resolve its effect, and it goes away, or you can put this in as a pilot and pair it to one of your units, or potentially link, depending on who it is. So we can either use this Thoroughly Damaged to choose one rested enemy unit and deal 1 damage to it, or we can pair Hayato Kobayashi to one of our units and give them +0/+1. Last and certainly not least, and again one of my favorite additions to the Gundam card game, is that of base cards. So like unit cards, these are a type of card that are going to be deployed to the battlefield. However, rather than sitting on the field with our units and pilots, they're actually going to be in a special zone off to the side, and they're going to act as a wall between our opponent's units and our shields, or our life. These powerful cards are going to be able to help us stave off our opponent's attacks, while also giving us great utility effects like strengthening our units, or in the event of this white base here, can actually give us new units to attack and defend with. Bases are also going to have their own zones and traits, as well as AP and HP. At this stage in the game, all bases have 0 AP and 4 or 5 HP, but maybe one day we're going to be seeing bases that are going to have attack power as well, and are going to be able to fight back against our opponent's units. So now that we understand the different types of cards that we have at our disposal, let's look at probably the most exciting part of any card game really. That's going to be constructing a deck. Now, a deck in the Gundam card game is going to consist of exactly 50 cards and can be constructed with cards of up to 2 different colors. Now that does mean that you can have monocolor decks. At this stage, I'm not seeing too much reason to do so, just given our limited card pool, but we can go up to 2 colors in any deck. At launch, we're going to have access to 4 different colors of cards. So far we have blue, green, white, and red. At this stage, the color identities are roughly as follows. So we have green that has a lot of ramp effects, so we're going to be able to play powerful cards earlier, as well as a lot of powerful cards with the breach keyword for destroying your opponent's units while also dealing them direct damage. With blue, we have a lot of effects that can heal our units with the recover keyword, as well as a lot of general kind of blue things with card draw and discard, as well as powering up your allies. With white, we have a lot of defense and kind of control aspects with strong command cards coupled with a lot of protective blocker units. Lastly then we have red. Red does red things. It has a lot of direct unit damage, a lot of aggression, and trying to keep your opponent's field clear while swinging in for a lot of big damage. As the game evolves over time as well, more colors will be added. So for example, we already have purple being confirmed for both the Iron-Blooded Orphans starter deck releasing in September, as well as the 00 starter deck. Going off of Bandai's other card games, we're likely going to see at least one more color, bringing us to a total of 6, probably either black or yellow. However, I wouldn't be surprised if they do leave it at 5 with purple. When we're choosing the cards that we want to include in our deck, we can have up to a maximum of 4 copies of each card in a deck, unless stated otherwise. Currently, we don't have any that say that you can or can't run 4, but given the way that card games evolve, I'm sure we'll have some kind of strategy like that eventually. Aside from our 50 card main deck, we're also going to have this kind of side deck almost, that's going to have an EX base and at least 1 EX resource, as well as exactly 10 of these resource cards. These are kind of like our mana system, or the way we pay for cards, essentially. So we'll be going over that shortly, as well as any other token cards that your deck may be able to generate. We're also going to need some kind of way to track your damage. I like to use dice for this. Now, when you are constructing your deck, Bandai recommends having about 25 to 28 unit cards, 6 to 8 pilots, 8 to 10 command cards, and 4 to 6 base cards when constructing your deck. However, as with any card game, use the ratios that are going to feel most comfortable to you and your playstyle. In addition to your card ratios, it is important to also be mindful of the level of cards that you're including to ensure that you have a good number of cards that you can play in the early stages of a game, as well as ensuring that you have the right pilots to form link units with the mobile suits that you've selected. So now that we've created our Gundam card deck, we're ready to play. Let's get to the exciting part, and that is learning how to play the game. Alright, so first things first, we're going to need to get our board set up and ready to play. So like any game, we're going to start, of course, by shuffling up our deck. Once that's ready, we're going to get our resource deck and place it close by, but separate from the main deck. So we're going to go over how this works in just a moment. So we are all shuffled up and ready to go here. I'm going to separate out my tokens and my EX resources. So all my tokens can go down here, and I like to place my resource deck somewhere over on the kind of lower left, like that. Now, once you've decided who's going first, whether that be through a die roll, through rock, paper, scissors, hand-to-hand combat, whatever you're feeling like on any given day, each player is going to draw their opening hand of 5 cards. Now, what you're looking for in your opening hand is a nice mix of low-cost units to kind of get you started in the early game. Definitely can't hurt to have maybe 1 or 2 kind of mid-game cards as well to keep you going once you get there. Now, I'm going to be using a definitely not scripted hand for the purposes of tutorial in this video, so I'm going to throw this one back using my mulligan. If you're unhappy with your hand, each player starting with the first can put the hand back on the bottom of the deck and draw a fresh hand of 5 cards. However, you must keep this second hand. No more mulligans after that. Once we have done our mulligan there, we're going to shuffle the deck. And once we're all shuffled, we're going to be setting up our life or our shields. So to do so, give that a good shuffle there. We're going to take the top 6 cards of our deck. We're going to place them overlapping from the bottom up, like so. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great, we're good to go there. So essentially, the goal of the game is very similar to Digimon and One Piece. You want to break through your opponent's 6 shields and then deal direct unit damage to win the game. Lastly, once you're all set up there, each player is going to take their EX base token, so each player has one, and we're going to set that up in the base area so that each player starts with a base. Good to go. Alright, we're ready to play. Alright, now that we're set up and ready to play, let's start looking at what a turn looks like in the Gundam card game. Now, for my example here, I don't exactly have room to set up my opponent's board as well, just using this one camera. So what I'm going to do is just kind of represent their life and shields as well as their base along the top here. And if they play any units as well, I'll just put them along the top here for just for our example's sake. Now, one thing that I did miss just in the previous part for the setup as well is this EX resource token. Now, the player that's going second is also going to start the game with 1 EX resource token, and this is essentially like a one-off resource that we'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. You can kind of think of it like the coin from Hearthstone. But now that we're ready to go, let's look at what a turn in the Gundam card game actually looks like. So they're going to be made up of 5 rough steps or phases. That's going to be our start phase, draw phase, resource phase, main phase, and end phase. Now the start phase is normally where we do things like untapping or resolving any start phase effects. Since we're going first and we don't have any units, we're going to skip that. Now in Gundam, the going first player also does draw a card, so we're going to draw our card for turn. Next, we then have our resource phase. So let's now talk about resources. Resources are essentially like the mana or resource system, as again, literally called resources in Gundam. These are how we're going to actually pay for our cards. Now in the resource phase, just after the draw phase, we're going to draw 1 resource from our resource deck and place it here. Once we've done so, we're going to proceed to our main phase where we're going to be able to start playing cards. So how do we actually do that? Let's first refer to our unit card here, the GM. Now, from this, we can see that the GM is a level 2 1-cost unit, meaning that we can pay it by paying 1 resource as long as we're level 2. Now, our level is represented by the resources that we have available to us. It's equal to the maximum number of those resources. So currently, as we've only got 1 resource card, we're only level 1. So even though we can pay the cost of the 1-cost gym, we're only level 1. So at the moment, instead of doing that, we're instead going to play this level 1 1-cost demi trainer. To do that, we're going to rest this resource and then play the demi trainer to the field. This is called deploying the unit, and some units will have abilities that affect or take effect when they are deployed to the field, represented by the preceding word deploy. Now, when we are playing units or bases, we do need to keep in mind that we have a maximum of 6 units and 1 base on the field at any given time. We do still have the ability to play new units or bases when that is the case, but we are going to need to destroy one of our existing units or bases to make room for it first. Now, in addition to playing cards from our hands, like deploying units and bases, pairing pilots, or using command cards, we can also activate some abilities of our cards. So if a card has the activate main keyword, then we can activate that ability in our main phase. As an example of this, let's look at the base card here. This is the Astacacia School of Technology Earth House. If this unit is deployed in our base area, we can activate the main ability here by resting to give all of our link units +1 AP for the turn. Some activate abilities may have cost to use them, or they may be limited to using them once per turn. Lastly, we can also use our main phase to attack our opponent with our units. Keeping in mind, however, that a unit card cannot attack the same turn that it was deployed, so they have summoning sickness, for example. So for now, since I have no resources available to me and my demi trainer can't attack, we're going to pass the turn. As we do so, we're going to be moving on to our end phase. Now during the end phase, we're going to resolve any abilities of our cards that may say that they activate on our end phase. Any temporary abilities that say that they last until the end of our turn will fall off. And if we have 11 or more cards in hand, then we're going to need to discard until we have 10 cards left in hand. So next up is our opponent's turn. Since they would have nothing on board, they're also going to skip the start phase, move on to the draw phase, they'll get to draw a card. Just like us, they'll also draw a card from their resource deck into the resource area. And before heading into their main phase, let's use this as a quick example of how the EX resource that the second player starts with works. Now, I've temporarily cleared off my side of the board here just so I can kind of illustrate how exactly this works, but as mentioned, the going second player is also going to start with this EX resource in their resource area. So at the start of their turn, they would draw a resource into their resource area. Now again, if you've played Hearthstone before, this is going to feel similar to the coin mechanic. The EX resource acts just like any other resource, however, it can only be used a single time. So once you rest it to pay for the cost of a card, it's going to be removed from the game. Now, what I think is the very cool part about the EX resource is that it also counts towards your level. So even though it's only turn 1, our opponent here is actually currently level 2 because of the EX resource. Again, as mentioned, once you use the EX resource, however, it will be removed from the game, so your level is going to drop back down by 1. Since we no longer have access to it, making good use of your EX resource to play powerful cards earlier and get ahead of your opponent is going to be a really good strategy in the game. There are a few other ways of getting EX resources through the use of some unit cards like the Wing Gundam Bird mode, which places an EX resource when it's deployed. Alright, now quick apologies, I've just had to turn the light in my room off. It was getting, or on, it was getting a little bit dark in here, and I do just want to make sure that you guys can see the cards properly. It is just going to cause a little bit of an ugly shadow on the playmat from my phone and my big head in my hands, so apologies in advance about that. Now for the rest of our opponent's turn, they're going to save their EX resource for now, and they're just going to pay 1 for essentially what is a 1-for-1 copy of the card that we've played. However, it's in blue. That's going to be this level 1, 1/1 Tragos with blocker. So they're going to play that and pass their turn back to us. Back to our turn now, we'll go through our start phase. Again, nothing to really do at the moment, so we'll then draw. For our draw step, go to the resource phase, place our resource here, and we're ready to go. Now that we've got 2 resources, we're back up to level 2 now as well. So now we can go back to the gym that we wanted to play last turn, this one here. We are now level 2, so we can pay 1 to play that onto our board. All right, so during our main phase as well, we also are going to have the opportunity to attack with our Demi Trainer here. Now, normally, given that this is a blocker unit, we would actually be leaving this one as active so that we can block with it on our turn. However, for example's sake here, I'm going to go ahead and attack. So we declare that 1 at a time, importantly, because there's no kind of attack step like there is in Magic. It's more like Digimon where you can just attack at any point during your main phase. So we do 1 attack at a time. We're going to swing in with our Demi Trainer. For argument's sake, our opponent will not block with the Tragos, and we're going to deal 1 damage to the opponent's EX base there. So again, we want to mark this with a dice. We'll just put 1 damage on the base there. Again, because our gym's been played this turn, we're unable to attack with it. We're not going to do anything with our second resource here, so we'll pass the turn back to our opponent. All right, now we're going to fast forward back to our turn here. We'll just say, for example's sake, that our opponent hasn't played anything and has 3 resources left available to them. Let's go ahead and go through our start phase, putting everything back to active. We'll draw, and we're going to add a resource. All right, so we're now level 3, so I'd say it's just about time to go on the offensive. So our opponent has 1 blocker in play, so first of all, we're going to want to deal with that. For us to do that, we're going to, now that we're level 3, play our 2-cost 2/3 gun tank here. So let's rest our 2 resources. We'll play the gun tank. Now this has an on deploy effect, so let's take a look. This one says on deploy, choose 1 enemy unit with 2 or less HP and rest it. So we're going to target our opponent's Tragos there, resting down their blocker. Next, we're going to play a pilot card. So by paying 1 cost here, fully tapping out our resources, we're going to play Hayato Kobayashi. So hopefully this will focus up, there we go. We're going to play this in its pilot form here. So that's going to equip to our gun tank, and they have now become a pair. However, that isn't all. Let's take a closer look at the gun tank, because we've now paired it with specifically Hayato Kobayashi. If we look just along the bottom here, we can see that the gun tank's link target is Hayato Kobayashi. So any pilot can be paired to a unit card to power it up. However, if we pair a pilot with its particular name or trait, then they're going to instead become a link pair. What this means is that that unit can now attack the turn it was played. Some pilots or units are also going to have powerful abilities that can only be activated once they're linked as well. So now let's press the attack. So first we're going to attack with the gym that we played last turn. When we attack, we can choose to either attack our opponent's shield area, or we can attack any of our opponent's rested units. So what we're going to do here to get rid of this Tragos permanently is we're going to attack into it with our gym. Now let's look at how unit versus unit battle works. All we need to do here is compare our unit, our opponent's unit's AP and HP. Our gym has 2 AP and 2 HP, the Tragos has 1 of each. So in the battle, our units are going to deal damage to each other at the same time. The gym's going to deal 2 damage to the Tragos' 1 HP, and it's going to be destroyed. However, on its way out, it's going to deal 1 damage to our gym in return, but our gym has 2 HP. This doesn't kill our gym, so we're going to use a dice to mark 1 damage to keep track of this. So our Tragos goes away there. Then we're going to attack into our opponent's shield area with our linked gun tank, because again, since this is a link unit, we can attack with it the turn that it was played. So it's going to be swinging in as a 2/4. Our opponent's EX base has 2 damage left on it from the one that we dealt last turn with our Demi Trainer, so that EX base is going to now be destroyed. We're going to end our turn there, however we're not going to be removing the dice from our gym, because importantly damage does not refresh from units and is going to carry over from turn to turn. Keep in mind though that some units and commands are going to let you heal your units. Now just to keep this tutorial from dragging on too long, I'm going to advance our board state by a few turns just so we can go over a couple of different things all at once. Alright, now we've gone ahead in the game a little bit now. It's our opponent's turn, they're on level 6 including their EX resource, and they've destroyed our EX base, so our shields are open. But we have a blocker and we have some resources available and a trick up our sleeve. They're going to go first by attacking with their Leo. So they're going to direct that one into our shield area. It's got 2 AP, but what we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of the action step. We're going to pay 1 and use the command card Unforeseen Incident, since this one can be played on the action step. With Unforeseen Incident, we're going to choose our enemy's Leo and give it -3 AP until the end of our opponent's turn. Now because of this, the attack is still going to hit, however, all of the shields in our shield area are considered as having 1 HP. So since our enemy Leo is dealing 0 damage, it can't break our shield and the attack ends. So using the action step, we've managed to protect our shields and we still have a blocker available for any other tricks our opponent may have. The action step occurs at 2 times. First, when a unit attacks, the defending player will have an opportunity to play an action step card first, followed by the attacking player, and then if the attacking player plays a card on the action step, then the defending player will have another opportunity to play an action step card, then back to the attacking player, so on and so forth. There's also another action step at the beginning of the end phase. Next up, our opponent's going to use 4 resources and play the Wing Gundam. Wing Gundam is a level 6 4-cost unit with 4 AP and 5 HP, as well as an ability called Breach, which we're going to look at in just a moment. Next up, they're going to play the pilot card, Hero Yui. Hero is going to form a link pair with the Wing Gundam as specified at the bottom of Wing. So naturally, Hero gives the Wing Gundam +2 AP and 1 HP, but that's not all. Since this is a link pair, Hero's During Pair ability activates and gives the Wing Gundam an additional 1 HP and AP, making the Wing Gundam a massive 7 AP, 7 HP unit. Now since that one's linked, it can attack. They're going to go ahead and go straight for our shields, and we're going to put our tiny little 1/1 blocker in the way of that attack in an attempt to prevent the damage. Now, our Demi-Train is going to get absolutely blown away, but that's not going to be the end of it. The Wing Gundam does have the Breach ability, meaning that when it destroys an enemy unit, it deals the specified amount of damage to the opponent's shield area or base if they have one. The Wing has Breach 5, meaning it's going to deal 5 damage. Now I mentioned before that shields are treated as having 1 HP. Keep in mind that 5 damage will still only break 1 shield forever. For now, in the game's current state, it's 1 attack per shield, as there are no effects like security attack in Digimon or crits like Vanguard. When a shield's broken, we simply reveal the top card of our shield area and we're going to look for a burst symbol. Looks like we did get one. So if your shield has the burst symbol here, then when it's broken, we're going to activate that burst effect. However, if a shield does not have a burst ability, it simply goes to the trash and nothing happens. We've hit the white base here, which is great. Its burst effect says that we can deploy it straight away. So we're going to put that into our shield area there. When we play it, it does have an on-deploy effect as well, which all bases in the game currently have, which is to add 1 of our shields to our hand. So we'll place the white base into the base zone, and we'll take the top card here into our hand. We took a big hit there, but we did manage to hit a burst card and get some defense back, so we're still okay. Lastly, our opponent's going to use their EX resource to play another Tragos. So now that they have a blocker as well, but now that they have used it, that EX resource would go away. On their end step, the Leo is going to get its AP back that we took away with the Unforeseen Incident. We would proceed to our draw step and adding a resource, and that will pretty much leave things there. That should cover a lot of playing the game for now. The game is essentially going to continue like this, with the aim of the game, again, clearing all of your opponent's shields, then hitting them directly to win the game. Alternatively, if your opponent's left with no cards left in their deck, then they will also lose the game.
Alright, so now that we've seen it all in action, let's briefly recap what we've learned so far. Setting up the game, we're going to shuffle the deck and draw 5 cards. If you're not happy with your hand, then we'll put the full 5 to the bottom of the deck and draw 5 new cards. You must keep the second hand, and then we'll shuffle the deck if you did mulligan. Next, place the top 6 cards of your deck overlapping as your shields. Place your deck of 10 resource decks aside separately and keep the tokens your deck may generate handy. We'll place the EX base in the base area, and the second player places the EX resource in their resource area. Next, we'll recap the turn phases. So we begin with the start phase, we'll set all units, bases, and resource cards as active. we'll draw a card in the draw phase, and in the resource phase, we'll place one resource from the resource deck into the resource area. During our main phase, we can perform any of the following actions in any order, any amount of times. We can play a card from our hand by paying its resource cost, provided we meet its level requirements. We can activate any of our activate main abilities on the cards that we have in play, or we can attack with a unit. One thing that we didn't quite go over in the step throughs before is that there are a kind of set order of attack steps when it comes to attacking with a unit, so we'll cover those now as well. Starting off with the declaration of the attack. After that's done, your opponent will have the opportunity to declare any blockers. Next up, you'll have the action step, starting with the defending players so they can use any command cards or abilities that state during the action step. Once that's completed, you'll move on to the damage step, so assigning all damage at once if there are any units specifically battling, and then you'll move on to the end of the battle step. Lastly, we have the end phase. So this starts with an action step to activate any command cards or abilities that can activate during that time. We'll resolve any end of turn effects. Any of our temporary abilities are going to wear off. And then if we do have 11 or more cards in hand, you'll discard down to 10. And then that'll proceed over to our opponent. Now that we understand the basics of playing the game, we're going to wrap up by going over a couple of different types of keywords and effects that our cards may have. To start off with, let's go over some of the keyword abilities. Repair. At the end of your turn, any units that have repair are going to heal HP equal to the amount specified. So for example, the Gundam has repair 2, meaning that it will heal 2 HP at the end of your turn. Breach. When a unit with Breach destroys an enemy unit in battle, it will deal the specified amount of damage to your opponent's shield or their base if they have one. One note with this is that your unit does not need to survive the battle for Breach to activate, so you'll still deal the Breach damage if both units are destroyed in battle. Also keep in mind that you cannot win the game with Breach. Support. A unit with support can be rested to give another friendly unit the specified number of AP. So for example, Angelo's Girazulu can use its support 2 ability in our main phase to rest itself and give another unit 2 AP for the turn. Blocker. A unit with blocker can be rested when the enemy declares an attack to redirect the attack into itself during the blocker step. First Strike. A unit with First Strike will assign its AP to enemy units in battle before the enemy unit assigns theirs. If we attack our enemy's 2/2 unit with our own 2/2 unit that has First Strike, we'll deal 2 damage first and destroy the enemy unit before it has a chance to assign its own damage, and our unit will survive the battle. High Maneuver. Units with High Maneuver cannot be blocked by units with the blocker ability. Next, we have some keywords that dictate when an ability can be activated or a command card can be played rather than an ability itself. Activate Main. Cards with Activate Main can only activate their ability during the main phase. If Activate Main is followed by a condition, then that condition must be met before activating the ability. For example, this card says Activate Main 2. This means that to activate the ability, you must also pay 2 resources. Activate Action. This functions the exact same as Activate Main, but instead of activating during our main phase, it can only be activated during the action step. Main. This will be found on command cards and means that that particular command card can be played from your hand during the main phase. Similarly, command cards with the action keyword mean that that command card can be played during the action step. Pilot command cards with the action keyword cannot be paired as pilots during the action step, only the command card can be activated. Lastly, we have some trigger keywords. These will usually be followed by effects that will activate when the keyword trigger is met. Burst. When a card with Burst is revealed after being destroyed as a shield, you may activate the Burst effect. Note that this is a may effect. Deploy. An effect with Deploy will trigger when the card enters the battle area. Attack. Any abilities with this keyword will trigger when the unit declares an attack. Destroyed. The effect activates if the unit is destroyed. Note that being returned to the hand is not being destroyed. When paired. Abilities with this keyword will activate when a pilot is paired to the unit. This will sometimes require a pilot that meets certain conditions. You may also see this as when linked, in which case this will only trigger when paired with the correct link unit. During pair. Unlike when paired, this effect will activate while a unit is paired and will be considered as a constant effect rather than a one-off trigger like the when paired keyword. Similar to when paired, you may also see this as during link, in which case this will also only activate when paired with the correct link unit. Lastly, we have once per turn. An effect with once per turn keyword can only activate once on each turn. If there are multiple copies of the same card with the same once per turn effect, each of those units' abilities can trigger once. Alright, now I know we said we'd be wrapping up with the keyword section there, but I promise I do have just one more topic to cover with the game. So by default, everything that we've kind of gone over so far is for the main 1v1 format of Gundam. However, there are actually a couple of alternate game modes that the game is releasing with that you can try with some more friends. First is the clan battle mode. This is a 2v2 format for 4 players. So players are going to pair up into 2 teams and they'll sit next to each other across from the other pair. Each player is still going to use their own main and resource deck, and the rightmost player on either side is going to act as essentially the leader, and leaders will determine which team goes first. The main difference here is that each player is actually going to set out 4 shields instead of 6, and a team will stagger their shields alternating side to side, so you'll form a total number of 8 shields on either side. Each team can still only deploy 1 base on those shields, and both players on the going second team will get an X resource. From here, the game will pretty much play the same with just some small tweaks to allow better collaboration between players. Both players will take their turns simultaneously, and phases and action timings are passed through as a team. You are encouraged to discuss strategy with your teammate to kind of dictate how best to proceed here. However, if there are any disagreements, the team leader does have the final say. Any effects on cards that refer to a friendly unit will actually refer to both your unit and your teammate's units as well. However, if a card refers to only you and your, it only refers to the owner of that card. When you are attacking, you can attack either of your opponent's rested units or their shield area. And when being attacked, teammates can use their own blockers to defend their teammates' units. Resources and cards are not shared between players. The win conditions for Clan Battle are the same as normal 1v1. This is one that I have actually had the opportunity to test out during a Learn to Play event, and I definitely enjoyed myself here. The gameplay is really the same, but I found the collaboration aspect a lot of fun. The second alternate game mode is the Battle Royale mode, which is made for 3 or more players. Each player will ready their deck as normal, and once the first player has been decided, they'll choose the turn order to be either clockwise or counterclockwise. Then, as a group, you'll decide your victory condition between a choice of 2. First, we have Winner Takes All, which is the first player to deal direct combat damage to a player wins the game. So under this condition, if a player's deck runs out of cards, then that player will be removed from the game and play proceeds. The other win condition is Last Player Standing. Last player to remain undefeated will win the game. So standard loss conditions apply here, and once all but one player have been defeated and removed from the game, the last player wins. Similar to Clan Battle, the gameplay itself is largely the same from here, just with more opponents than normal. This one feels a lot like Commander, which I'm a big fan of, and I'm hoping to see some more card design geared toward these multiplayer formats going forward, and it would be really cool to even see sealed product that's specifically geared toward these game modes as well. Alright, that should do it for your introduction to the Gundam Card Game. This one definitely ended up a lot longer than originally intended, just as I kind of kept on thinking of more things that I wanted to add, so I really appreciate all of you who have stuck it out till the end here. This is a franchise that means a lot to me, so I've been very excited for this game to launch, and I'm really looking forward to making more content for this. If you did enjoy, please do leave a like, and if you have any questions that I wasn't able to answer here, then please leave a comment below and I'll find an answer for you. Join me next time for an analysis of the first 4 starter decks which have already launched as of last Friday. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, then please do subscribe. Have a great one, and I'll see you on the next one.